People love to believe that loyalty is measured by promises, but psychology tells a different story. Loyalty is rarely built by words alone. It is built by proximity, consistency, emotional investment, shared experiences, and the repeated decision to choose someone even when life offers countless distractions. The biggest mistake many people make is assuming that once a bond has been created, it can survive indefinitely without attention, without presence, and without effort. They believe distance is only a matter of geography, when in reality, the human mind experiences distance emotionally long before it experiences it physically. You can sit thousands of miles away and still feel close to someone if emotional connection is constantly reinforced. At the same time, you can live in the same city and become strangers because emotional distance has quietly replaced emotional intimacy. Expecting unwavering loyalty while allowing that emotional distance to grow without understanding its consequences is not wisdom. It is wishful thinking. The uncomfortable truth is that relationships do not exist in memories. They exist in the present moment. Every day, the connection is either strengthened or weakened. There is no permanent pause button on human emotions. They are always moving, always adapting, always responding to the environment around them. Human beings are emotional creatures before they are logical ones. We often convince ourselves that commitment should be enough, that history should be enough, that the promises made in happier times should somehow outweigh months or years of emotional absence. But the brain does not operate on sentiment alone. It constantly evaluates who makes us feel understood today, who listens today, who creates safety today, who shares our victories and disappointments today. Emotional security is not stored like money in a bank account. It must be renewed over and over again. Every meaningful interaction reinforces trust, while every prolonged silence slowly weakens it. This is why expecting someone to remain emotionally frozen exactly where you left them ignores one of the most fundamental principles of psychology. People are constantly changing because life constantly changes them. Every challenge, every conversation, every disappointment, and every new opportunity quietly reshapes who they are becoming. Many people confuse loyalty with obligation. They assume that because someone once cared deeply, that care should remain untouched, regardless of what happens afterward. But genuine loyalty is never sustained through obligation alone. It survives because two people continue giving each other reasons to remain emotionally connected. Imagine watering a plant for months and then suddenly stopping because you believe the roots should remember your kindness forever. Eventually, the leaves begin to fade, not because the plant became ungrateful, but because living things require continuous nourishment. Human relationships operate in much the same way. Emotional neglect often happens so gradually that neither person notices it until the connection already feels unfamiliar. What once felt effortless begins to feel forced. Conversations become shorter, excitement becomes routine, curiosity disappears. Then one day, someone says, "Everything changed," when in reality, everything changed one small moment at a time. Distance itself is not the enemy. Emotional complacency is. There are relationships that survive oceans because both people intentionally protect the connection. They communicate honestly, they remain curious about each other's lives, they celebrate victories together and support each other through failures. They create rituals that remind both hearts they still matter. Then there are relationships separated by only a few streets that quietly collapse because nobody invests emotionally anymore. The difference is never measured in miles, it is measured in emotional presence. Presence means making another person feel seen, heard, valued, and remembered. Without that, even the strongest beginning can slowly dissolve. Psychologists often explain that familiarity creates emotional attachment. The more consistently we experience someone as part of our daily emotional world, the stronger that attachment becomes. But the opposite is also true. The less someone becomes part of our emotional routine, the weaker that attachment naturally grows. This is not cruelty, it is adaptation. The brain is designed to prioritize what repeatedly appears in our lives. New friendships form, new responsibilities emerge. Careers demand attention, families evolve, daily habits shift. Every new experience occupies mental space. If an old connection is never reinforced, it slowly moves further into the background. Not because it lacked meaning, but because the mind constantly reorganizes its emotional priorities. This is why unrealistic expectations create unnecessary heartbreak. Someone may sincerely believe that loyalty should never change, regardless of time or distance. While that sounds noble, it ignores how emotional bonds actually function. Loyalty is strongest when it is supported by trust, communication, mutual effort, and shared purpose. Remove those pillars for long enough, and even sincere affection begins to struggle under the weight of uncertainty. Doubt quietly replaces confidence. Questions replace certainty. Imagination fills the empty spaces left by silence. The mind dislikes unanswered questions, so it begins creating its own stories. Most of those stories are inaccurate, yet they still influence emotions. A delayed response suddenly feels intentional. A missed conversation becomes interpreted as indifference. The absence of reassurance slowly becomes louder than all the memories that once created security. One of the greatest psychological mistakes people make is believing that memories can permanently replace experiences. Memories are beautiful, but they are static. Relationships are dynamic. They require fresh moments that remind both people why the connection still matters. Think about childhood friendships that once felt unbreakable. At one point, you believed nothing could separate you. Yet, years passed. New environments introduced new people. New priorities emerged. Without constant interaction, those friendships often faded naturally. There was rarely betrayal involved. There was simply a lack of continued emotional investment. The relationship was not destroyed by conflict, it quietly dissolved through absence. Another difficult truth is that loneliness changes people. When emotional needs remain unmet for long periods, the human mind naturally seeks connection elsewhere. This does not necessarily mean replacing someone romantically. It may involve deeper friendships, stronger family bonds, mentors, communities, or new passions. Humans are wired for belonging. When one source of belonging becomes distant or unavailable, the brain instinctively searches for another. This is survival, not selfishness. Emotional isolation is uncomfortable because our nervous system associates meaningful relationships with safety. We naturally move toward environments where that sense of safety can be restored. There is also an invisible cost to idealizing loyalty beyond realistic expectations. It often prevents people from recognizing their own responsibility within relationships. It becomes easier to say, if the bond was real, nothing would change, instead of asking, have I continued giving this relationship what it needs? Self-reflection is uncomfortable because it removes the illusion that love alone guarantees permanence. Love may begin a relationship, but consistent behavior determines whether it survives. Respect is demonstrated repeatedly. Trust is reinforced repeatedly. Care is expressed repeatedly. Loyalty itself is strengthened repeatedly. Every healthy relationship is less like signing a permanent contract and more like tending a living fire. Ignore it long enough and eventually only ashes remain. Not because the fire was weak, but because every fire depends on continuous attention. Perhaps the most mature understanding of loyalty is recognizing that it should never be demanded while withholding the very conditions that allow it to flourish. Real loyalty grows where people feel emotionally secure, appreciated, respected, and consistently included in each other's lives. It is not sustained through guilt, fear, or expectations. It is sustained through intentional effort. The strongest relationships are rarely the loudest. They are the ones where both individuals quietly choose each other again and again, despite the distractions of life. They understand that closeness is not an accident, but a habit. Every message, every meaningful conversation, every honest expression of appreciation becomes another thread strengthening the bond. Over time, those threads create remarkable resilience, allowing the relationship to withstand challenges that would otherwise pull it apart. That is why expecting loyalty while allowing emotional distance to expand unchecked is a dangerous misunderstanding of human psychology. Loyalty is not a monument built once and admired forever. It is a living connection that survives because both people continue giving it reasons to stay alive. The reality that many people struggle to accept is that distance does not simply separate two people physically. It changes the environment in which emotions exist. Human feelings are deeply influenced by what is repeatedly experienced. The conversations that once happened naturally become scheduled. The laughter that once filled ordinary moments becomes limited to brief phone calls. The comforting silence that once felt peaceful slowly transforms into uncertainty, because silence from a distance rarely feels the same as silence in the same room. The mind begins filling those empty spaces with assumptions. Sometimes those assumptions are hopeful, but more often they are shaped by fear. Psychology teaches us that uncertainty is one of the greatest creators of anxiety, because the brain would rather believe an unpleasant story than have no story at all. This is why communication is never simply about exchanging information. It is about reducing uncertainty and reminding another person that they still have a meaningful place in your emotional world. Many people believe that if a connection is genuine, it should survive without maintenance. Yet every meaningful relationship in life proves the opposite. Think about any skill that has ever been mastered. Think about physical strength, confidence, trust, or even happiness. None of these remain strong without regular attention. Relationships follow the same principle because they are living systems, not permanent achievements. Every day presents small opportunities to either reinforce emotional security or quietly weaken it. Sometimes people wait for grand gestures while overlooking the incredible psychological power of small, consistent actions. A simple conversation where someone feels truly heard often strengthens a bond more than expensive gifts ever could. Remembering an important detail, checking in during a difficult week, celebrating an ordinary success, or asking thoughtful questions communicates something deeper than affection. It communicates presence. Presence is one of the greatest psychological needs because it tells another person, "You still matter in my life." There is another reason why expecting loyalty across increasing emotional distance becomes unrealistic. Human beings naturally adapt to whatever becomes familiar. At first, separation feels painful because the brain is comparing the present with what used to exist. Every memory feels vivid, every absence feels noticeable. But as weeks become months and months become years, daily routines begin changing. The brain slowly stops expecting certain interactions because they no longer happen consistently. What once felt impossible gradually becomes normal. This adaptation is not betrayal. It is one of the brain's most remarkable survival mechanisms. Without the ability to adapt, people would remain emotionally trapped inside every painful experience they ever encountered. Adaptation allows healing, growth, and resilience. However, it also means that emotional closeness cannot simply rely on history. It must continue creating meaningful experiences in the present. This explains why two people can genuinely care about each other while still feeling as though they are drifting apart. Neither necessarily intended to create distance. Life simply became louder. Responsibilities multiplied, stress increased, priorities shifted. One conversation was postponed, another message received only a short reply. Calls became less frequent because both believed there would always be another opportunity tomorrow. Yet tomorrow quietly became next week, next month, and eventually another season of life. Relationships rarely collapse because of one dramatic event. They often weaken because of countless ordinary moments where emotional investment was delayed until it almost disappeared. The greatest danger is not conflict. The greatest danger is indifference, because conflict still acknowledges emotional importance, while indifference quietly removes it. Psychological research consistently shows that emotional intimacy grows through vulnerability rather than perfection. Many people become distant because they believe they should only share the polished version of themselves. They hide stress, fears, disappointments, and uncertainty to avoid appearing weak. Ironically, this protective strategy often creates even greater emotional distance. Authentic connection develops when people allow each other to witness their humanity rather than their performance. Trust is strengthened when someone feels included not only in moments of celebration, but also in moments of struggle. When those opportunities disappear for long periods, emotional familiarity begins fading. Two people may still remember each other, but they no longer understand who the other is becoming. They remain connected to an old version rather than the person who exists today.